It's Rachel again, and this is Jordan, my baby daddy. Say hello to YouTube.
I keep like, this camera is opposite.
It is opposite.
I'm on the wrong side of this camera.
He really is. So this week is our labor and delivery story, because it was our son. So even though I did all of the work.
Yeah, I worked, okay? And I did stuff that she didn't do. Like, not sleep.
I slept a little.
I'm the only one that didn't get a nap. I'm bringing this up now, because it's an important part of the story.
I told you that it was like the next day after my due date that I started having contractions. That's a lie. It was on the 28th of March, which is 2 days later. And so I think I called you at 11 in the morning.
Yeah, they were like, 11 in the morning, they called me and were like, I'm getting admitted! Woo!
Oh, no. 11 is when I called you and told you I was going in.
Oh, yeah, that was 1 o'clock you said you were being admitted, because I got there at 5.
Well, I was walking around for an hour. I didn't get there until about 12:30, so I was probably admitted by 2.
You called me, 2:20. 2:20. 1.
Down to the minute.
I remember that.
I think it was your mom at that point who told you.
Yes, my mom told me you were being admitted. And I left like an hour after that.
What did you say when she called you?
Finally. I was like, finally.
I was really, really thankful that there was someone who took mercy on me, because I had been contracting for a month or more. So they get me admitted, and they don't put me in a wheelchair. They have me walk to my room that they're admitting me in. So I think these people just think walking really helps. I'd been walking for a month trying to induce labor, and now I'm in labor, and they're like, keep walking. So that sucked, because I had to keep stopping and putting my hand on the wall that I mentioned before, and kind of just hoping that I didn't deliver the baby in the hallway. And so we get to the room, and it's huge. It's bigger than that room that I was in for 6 weeks.
Oh, it was a big room.
It was huge.
It's a very big room. There's a lot of people in it.
That's because it was a teaching hospital, and I knew that it was a teaching hospital because when I was in for 6 weeks, there was a lot of interns and residents and whatnot. But when I was signing the paperwork when I was being admitted, I didn't read the part that said that everyone could be in my room, which is why there were 11 doctors when I was delivering Ryot. So
it actually helped in the end having as many doctors as we did.
Yeah, there was a lot of attention.
Well, the thing is, one of the doctors, like our actual OB, was able to do her job a lot better.
She wasn't the actual OB. The guy standing in the back with the glasses, he was my doctor. A resident, seriously, delivered me. So, I'm being admitted. I get into the room. They have me sign all this paperwork, and Nedra is there, and Megan is on her way. Megan is his older sister. The one I mentioned who was pregnant.
And delivering in, 4 weeks?
No, August. What is next month? Dang.
That's 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Like, seriously.
Yep. Wow. Time. Anyway, she was working, so she had to... No, she wasn't working yet. So what she did is she brought her computer with her to work in the hospital room until she got off of work to help me. So she's over in the corner doing her work while I'm, starting my kind of active labor phase. And your mom is like, can I get you anything? And I was like, I'm in pain. I think I'm fine. I don't need anything. I'm not allowed to eat. So she goes out and gets Sonic. Her and Megan are eating Sonic in front of me. And she brought me back a slushie, which I couldn't drink because, one, I really was in too much pain to drink it, and then also I just started, like, the more harder the contractions got, like, the more I started vomiting. Anyway, so I think this happened before you came. So they tried to put this IV in, and they tried putting it in my left hand, and I tell this girl who's doing it, the nurse, I can't even remember her name now, but I reported her. She's like, oh, I can do it, and she brings in 3 other nurses because she couldn't do it, and then she finally stuck me anyway, and she blew my vein. She put in an IV and blew my vein and kept it in there and started pumping saline solution through it. Seriously hurt more than my contractions. I was screaming. My hand was on fire. And finally another nurse came in, and I told her, oh, no, it's fine. Your vein isn't blown. I think your contractions. Do you want anything for the pain? I was like, yeah. What can fix the pain? Get me a new IV, because this one, my vein is blown. And the nurse comes back in. I go, my vein is blown. Check the line. And she goes, wow, there's nothing actually moving through this. I think your vein is blown. No shit. I'm like crying because of my IV when I should be crying because of my contractions.
They got her IV set when I got there.
And
it was this awesome old guy
and he
that
was
set her
Southern.
IV. He was the coolest old guy.
He was this nice Southern gentleman from Georgia. He kept calling me ma'am.
Kind of nurse are those awesome old men, and he reminded me of my dad. Honestly, he reminded me of my dad, because my dad's never gonna quit. He's never gonna quit. He's gonna be a nurse till he dies.
His dad's a nurse. Oh, that's right. Your dad was there too, but he was in a waiting room. He didn't want to. He wanted to just chill out until it was time for me to push.
Well, he needed to. He works a lot and stuff.
But this guy was just all Southern and Georgian and
hilarious. He was hilarious.
He kept calling me ma'am. And I kept asking him, like, please find any other vein than the one right there in my wrist. And he's like, I think we're gonna have to go in right there. And I was like, why? He says, that's the only vein you got. And I was like, why? But he was really nice about it. It didn't really hurt that bad. He put this, like, numbing solution on it.
And because he did it right, it doesn't hurt bad when they stick you right the first time. It doesn't.
And he only did it the one time.
He stuck you once, and it was done.
He was an anesthetician. They had like the nurses, the senior nurses, a phlebotomist came in, and then an anesthetician. And I loved him so much.
I wish that he had been the one who gave you your epidural a little bit, but I do love your epidural guy.
After that, I think at this point when I get in the room, they wanted to check me again. And they said I was a 5. They put me on the baby monitors, and they wanted to check Ryot. They kept saying that he was somewhat in distress, but not much. I mean, my contractions were just agitating him. I mean, it wasn't like extreme distress. It wasn't enough to obviously make me go into having a C-section, but they wanted me to lay on my side, and then they kept losing him because he, like all babies, hated the freaking heart monitor.
Yeah, but he was just a seriously skilled little monkey at avoiding it because he had 6 weeks practice.
Oh, yeah.
He had already been on a baby monitor for like 6 weeks.
Nurses hated him and loved him at the same time.
He could disappear in a second for hours. You couldn't find him.
They're like, is he here? Is he here?
And
Tell
they
me.
would sit there moving
right
around
here.
and around and around, and they'd finally get him and it'd go bloop, 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 bloop.
Or he'd kick it and punch it and try to make it move.
And he would punch the crap out of it, and then he would just, like, disappear somewhere else.
So...
And he'd be gone again.
They have the monitor on, but they can't find him. And when they do find him, he's in somewhat distress because he's trying to get away from it so much. I think it's freaking out his heart. Finally, my contractions were just so bad. I think I was already screaming at this point. No, when he got there, there was like this little tiny fight between him and his mom and sister. They're like, you need to be here, you need to pay attention to her, because he wanted to, like, draw. That's what he does. And he, is not during, like, when I was really contracting, just, when I was kind of contracting.
I was more thinking I just was gonna sketch between contractions.
And at this point, my contractions were like every 3 minutes.
Like, we had time. Like, I could have gotten a couple drawings done by the end of the evening.
But they're like, no, you have to pay attention to her. And I didn't know what was going on. I only heard you have to pay attention to her, and he's drawing. And I was like, got in his face, and I was like, if you're going to be here, be here.
And I was like, listen. And I explained it to her.
We went walking down the hall with my IV.
I explained it to her the way I tried to explain it to my mom. And she was like, oh, I would have been fine with that.
I think I held you for like 2 or 3 of the contractions.
3.
And we get back, and I'm just in way too much pain to
5.
walk. There are 5 contractions in that 2 times around. It wasn't that big of a circle. And I was like, okay, well, I cannot walk anymore. And so we get me back in the bed, and my back starts hurting really, really bad. I mean, like, every contraction, I just started having, like, the worst back labor.
So they put her in the tub.
Yeah, I asked to go in the tub. And they're like, well, I don't know, because we still need to monitor the baby. And I go, you're not going to be able to monitor the baby. He's still running away. So they didn't listen to me, and Jordan goes and you walk away.
No, I waited for them to say that you were getting in the tub. I didn't go anywhere. They said you were getting in the tub, so you went and got in the tub. And after you got in the tub,
well, I was trying to get
internal monitor on.
I was trying to get They try to strap me in and still get him monitored while I'm in the tub. They have to switch out the little things to make him waterproof. They put plastic all over him, and he goes out for a smoke. And Megan is by my side, and I'm naked and very exposed to the world. And not caring, because I'm in too much pain, and the water felt really good. It got the pressure off my back. It kind of lifted me up a little bit. And I'm screaming still. Like, I think the screaming is getting louder. And even though my back's not hurting as much, the contractions are getting worse. And I just noticed that with every contraction, I feel like I'm being ripped a little bit. And so I think 15 minutes passes, and because that's all they would allow me in the tub. And so they get me out, and the nurse says, don't move. And I go, why? She goes, I need to get you another towel. I go, I'm not that big. She goes, no, you're bleeding. And I look down, there's like blood rushing down my leg, and I was like, that's not good. And she's like, I don't know if your water broke or if your mucus plug came out. I go, my mucus plug came out a long time ago. My mucus plug came out when my water broke the first time. How many women get to say that?
At 40 weeks and 2 days, you.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't happen. Remember that doctors had this conversation.
Yeah. And so they get me back in the bed, and Jordan comes walking in when they're checking me.
No, but no, I want to say what I heard Rachel say when I first walked into the room. I hear Rachel telling the nurse, I want my pain meds now. I got to a 9. And she's telling him that she feels like she's at a 9 pain-wise. And the doctor checks her and then looks at her and says, do you want the good news or the bad news?
And I go, let's go with the good news. And
you're at a 9. What's the bad news? We can't give you IV drugs.
And what I was doing at that point is I wasn't on any meds because I was waiting until the pain level for me was until a 9, and then I wanted to go to like Stadol, which is an amazing drug that makes you sleepy, and it's kind of like a muscle relaxer. It's better than Ambien because Ambien is like a sleep aid. This one is like a serious. It makes your contractions it makes them easier, and this way I wouldn't have to have an epidural. Not that I want to do it natural, I just didn't want to be in a bed. And so when they told me that I couldn't have anything, and I'm at a 9 centimeter dilation and 100% effaced, I'm like, are you shitting me?
And I'm going to add in here, this is when she started to get louder than, like, should be humanly possible. And the thing is, like, nobody seems to understand me when I say that she was louder than most women are for a reason. And, like, all women get loud. It's like an animal thing, right? But when you know how to project
to the back of the audience.
To the back of the room. Project to the back row. When you know how to project and you're being loud, you are louder than other people. I still don't have all the hearing in my right ear. I have not heard everything in this ear since I got in my car and I turned on the radio the next day after, like on my way home after Ryot was born, because I stayed up all night through the whole thing and then went on my way home. And I turned on the radio and I could not hear anything out of the passenger side speaker. I couldn't hear anything out of the passenger side speaker. And I was like, did I blow my speaker out? So I turned it all the way to the right on the speaker knob I put it all the way to the right, speaker only. I could barely hear it. I'm like, did I blow out my speaker? And I turned my head and I could hear it just fine.
Oh, God.
And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Is my right ear seriously messed up right now? Because that's ridiculous. Because she got loud at this point. This is when she got really loud. She had been loud up till this point when she was having the contractions and they were bad. But she just lost it. And lost control of the contractions.
I couldn't get on top of them for a second.
She lost control of them for about 30 minutes.
I didn't feel that long.
It was a long time. It was 7 contractions.
Well, by this point, my contractions had sped up.
I know.
Of course you know. But, we're 9 centimeters.
There was 11. 11 contractions in that 30 minutes. 7 of them deafened me.
I'm 9 centimeters, and my mom is still 2 hours away. And I didn't have her in the labor room while I was laboring because I told you, she was laughing at me the last time I had contractions, so why would I want her in the room this time, you know? It didn't make sense to me, and I didn't want to be annoyed. I just wanted to try to have, the best labor I could, and it was my first. And so when I was told I was a 9, I was like, someone should call my mom.
Yeah.
So Nedra's calling my mom, and I'm in the background.
And I'm actually in pain at this point. I was in serious pain by this point.
I really doubt it was worse than mine.
Yeah, I doubt it was worse than hers either. But I kept being promised a nap. And it was coming up on 1 a.m. It was, 11:47 is when you got the epidural.
My mom showed up at 11, right?
No, you got the epidural at 11.
Yeah, my mom showed up
She showed up
after.
at 12:40.
So, at one point, I was holding his head during my contraction. I needed to focus on him. And then the nicest little Asian man came in. And because they told me when I couldn't get the IV meds, and this was probably around 7-ish. Was it that long? Those bastards.
Yeah, it was a while.
Oh, wow. They told me that they were going to send another anesthetician in for an epidural. I didn't ask them for an epidural, but they were sending one. And so this little Asian man comes in. I think his name was Ken.
Yep.
And he comes in. Why do I remember his name but not the nice southern gentleman?
I don't know.
Anyway, so, and I still remember Gloria's name. And I only had her that one day. The Irish woman.
Yeah, we talked to Gloria a bunch of times.
Yeah, anyway.
We loved Gloria. She was the
fantastic.
coolest.
Anyway, so, Ken comes in, and he's just so cute, little, and he's got his little, lab coat on. And so he comes in, he's like, okay, I heard that you might want an epidural. And at this point, I think I was crying.
She was weeping.
And he goes, well, do you want one? And I go,
I want one, but I don't know if I can have one.
I don't know if I can handle it. I don't know if I can stay still. my voice was really that high.
And he asks her again. He's like, I just need you to say your name and I want an epidural. And I'm like, Rachel, repeat after me. My name is Rachel Coy and I want an epidural. My name is Rachel Coy and I want an epidural, but I don't know if I can handle one. And I'm all, Rachel, repeat after me and just say this. My name is Rachel Coy, and I want an epidural.
My name is Rachel Coy, and I
want an epidural. And I'm like, is that good enough? He's like, that's fine. And he starts setting up, right? And like,
he did not tell me anything about the epidural. All he said it's going to take 10 minutes, that they were going to put a needle in my back to dummy and then put in the IV line.
And he said, I'm going to need you to hold really still for part of it.
So I'm leaning over the side of the bed with my feet hanging, and he's sitting in front of me, facing me, and I'm holding on to him. And I'm still crying. And the contractions are coming on. I'm like, how the hell am I going to stay still for this? And I think it only took like 3 minutes.
Okay. So she had to hold still through 2 contractions during the actual, like, running the line for the epidural. Because what they do is when they're putting the epidural in, I learned some stuff about pregnancy and labor and delivery this day. Like, some interesting things that I didn't ever know. And a lot of people, even women that have delivered, don't actually know. Like an epidural. It's the weirdest needle, because it's not really a needle. It's like a catheter tube.
Well, it's an IV.
Well, no, it's not like a normal IV, though. It's like 5 inches long.
I could have done without knowing that.
And they shove it into your spine.
And there is very little room for error.
Not very little. You are shooting for a spot when you're putting in an IV. You're shooting for a spot that's the exact same size as the needle you're poking it with.
There's very little room
There's
for
zero
error.
room for error. Zero. There is no room for error. It's the exact same size as the needle. So you miss, it doesn't work.
Or it hurts. It messes something up in your body.
No, it doesn't really mess anything up. It's really hard to mess something up, even if you miss. They miss all the time. There's a lot of...
Ooh, you should talk to Lacey. They messed hers up bad.
Right. I know people that have had their epidural missed. I knew a girl that had to get stuck between 3 different vertebrae before they finally got it right. But she was getting that epidural. She was bound and determined to get it. Okay, so they, like, shove this catheter into your back, and they just keep shoving it in there. And I'm just like, whoa, that's kind of cool.
You're like, how far does this go?
Because what it does is when it injects the stuff, it releases it out of little holes all down the line, which is why it deadens everything.
Basically, what it does is it deadens from, like, the belly button down. And so within, like, seconds of it working, my face went from complete agony and horror to...
It was pretty funny when he gave her the first dose, and the first dose is like the really strong dose where they dose you.
They blast you.
And her face just kind of melted.
Oh, it was totally melty.
Like, it was like that 5th shot of Jack melty. Like,
okay, just for clarification, you were in the room because they had to send everybody out because it's a sterile procedure.
Yes, I was the only one in the room, and I got her to put her arms around my neck and hold on really tight and put her head in my chest and to breathe when I told her to.
And I did really well. I didn't move. And
she did exactly what I said and did exactly what the doctor said, and it was done in minutes, like seconds practically. The guy was amazing.
Oh, he was awesome.
We're so, like, grateful to have gotten this. The crowd of doctors we got were actually quite amazing.
But just for clarification, this guy did not explain how an epidural worked.
No. He forgot to explain to her that the little button that she had wasn't actually something she was supposed to use.
See, I thought, okay, I have
a button
into my back, and when I press this button, it will give me pain relief. I didn't realize it was an IV drip, and that I was continuously getting it. I thought that I was in control of it.
No.
Wrong. I pressed that thing 3 times.
More than that.
No, I only pressed it 3. I only pressed it 3 times.
That was probably the last time you remember pressing it.
I think after 3, I think I kind of like.
You were really, 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 really. Every time she had a contraction, after she got the epidural. Like, she'd feel the contraction, and it hurt a little bit still,
I
so
was
she'd
told
hit the
I was
button.
not supposed to feel the contraction.
So she'd
the
hit the
only
button.
thing that they explained, that I was not supposed to feel it.
Then the next time a contraction came and it still hurt a little bit, she hit the button again. And the next time it came, it still hurt a little bit, and she hit the button again, and she started getting really loopy at this point.
I felt
The next time she went to have a contraction after that, like...
This was like an hour later.
She just, like... She kept hitting the button every time she had a contraction, even though she couldn't feel them anymore after that third time she pressed the button.
I seriously don't remember
She
that.
just kept pressing the button.
They had come in and checked me, and they said, "Oh, you're a 10." And I was like, "Awesome, I get to push." And they're like, "Well, let's do some practice pushes." So I was like, "Okay, I can't feel anything, but I push. And I'm making progression, and the water sac is still intact, and they see it moving, and it's coming down, and they're like, okay, well, I think this is going to be fine, and this is almost like 1 o'clock in the morning, and so...
Right when I was supposed to take a nap.
And
this is the next time I got robbed of my sleep.
So they come in, and they're like, okay, well, we're going to break your water. I go, why? And they're like, oh, well, we have to. I go, no, you don't have to. But they did it anyway. And because they broke my water, when I told them I didn't want them to, water ruptured, and it was pretty, like, giant gush from what I was told. And
I don't remember the water break.
my mom does. She told me it was, like, huge. It was like a tidal wave. And
I was up near your head during the water break.
They check me again after they break my water, and I'm a 9.5. And I'm like, what happened to 10? And they're like, oh, well, a piece of your cervix fell down. It was being held up by your sac. And I was like, well, okay, well, I'll still push. I'm at a 9.5. That's basically a 10. They're like, well, we don't want you to tear your cervix and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, but so they came back an hour later. It's now 2 in the morning. Another time for Jordan to have his nap.
Yup. Oh, we might be ready to. You might be able to push through it.
And they're like,
so
okay.
we spent an hour trying to push through it.
No, not yet. Because then they told me, so we're gonna try to have you push. I go, okay. They're like, on your next contraction. I go, okay. My next contraction comes. I can't feel it. And they're like, I said on your next contraction. I go, okay. Can you tell me when it is? And they're like, you're going to have to, like, you can't feel your contractions? I go, I thought that was the whole point of the epidural.
And then they were like, wait a minute.
How many
times did you press that button? And she's sitting there with a death grip on this button still. Like, she can't feel a thing. And she's got a death grip. A death grip like she isn't letting this button go.
And I was like, 3? And they're like, we need to take that away from you now. And I was like, why? They're like, because we need you to feel your contractions to push. I go, I thought the point of an epidural was me to not having to feel them. Because nobody explained it to me. This is my first child. I don't know what I'm doing. I know I'm supposed to sit in a bed, feel pain, and push. That's it. That's what I see in the movies, and that's what I'm supposed to do. And I didn't go to birthing classes. Because nobody told me that I wasn't supposed to press that button, and they took it away from me, they said that until I felt my contractions that I could not push.
Well, you tried to push. They had you try to push.
And I could do it.
And you
I
tried,
was progressing.
And you were progressing, but you were progressing so slowly because his head was at the wrong angle, and you needed.
But we didn't know that yet.
But we didn't know that. But that was why your progression stopped. It wasn't because there's a little bit of cervix in the way. It was because his head was at the wrong angle.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They started pushing Pitocin when I was at a 9.5. Because they pushed the Pitocin and they stopped my epidural from being able to be pushed, I decided that I would sleep. since I couldn't feel anything, and I was really, really tired, and I knew that I would have to use all of my energy to push later. And during this time, when I'm sleeping, everything's groggy. They have me laying on my side because every other contraction, he is distressing. With me being on my back, he's distressing. And so I'm in and out, and I wake up and hear a fight going on about politics.
What politics were we talking about?
I don't know. I was drugged. No pain meds, just epidural, but just as good. But politics, and I go, why are you talking about politics when I am in labor?
Because you were sleeping for a while. For some reason, Jordan still did not get a nap.
I wake up, and there's like 3 different fights. One was about politics, the other one was about how you needed to support me and be my focal point. And I'm sleeping. How is he going to be my focal point when I'm sleeping?
I'm sitting there trying to get a little bit of sleep. Like, I didn't even have the bed. Like, I was seriously in a chair, like, propped up on a suitcase.
It is 5 o'clock in the morning now, and they check me again, and I am 10 centimeters still and fully effaced, and not quite crowning. I mean, we can see a bulge, or they could see a bulge. I couldn't see anything. And they said that it is time for me to push because I could finally feel my contractions. They were still very, very weak, which is awesome because that means I didn't have the ring of fire. And so Jordan's up by my...
I'm holding her knee and counting out her
on my right side. And so I feel one and I push. And they have you push like 3 times in one contraction, so 30 seconds each contraction. But he was going into distress when I was pushing a lot more than he already was, so I would have to wait for every other contraction and be on my side, because when I was pushing, it was hard on him, and we didn't know why. And so I have a nurse on my left and Jordan on my right, and I'm pushing, and I'm pushing, and I keep pushing. And it really doesn't feel like anything more than trying to take a big dump. I mean, you get the pressure. I don't have the pain because the epidural is amazing. I recommend it for everyone who does not want pain. And, so an hour goes by, and we still don't have a baby. I think by this point we're just starting to see a crown.
There was a bit of a crown going on after about an hour, and this is when the doctor started putting the oil on it, on his head. They were putting the cast... I don't remember what kind of oil they used. But they used some sort of oil.
It's a lubricant.
Dump it on the top of their head, and then they worked around the edges.
And see, in my birth plan originally, I didn't want anybody doing that at all. But because I was so numb from the epidural, I couldn't feel it, so I didn't know that they were doing it.
So, this part of the story, I think I should take over for a moment.
I totally think you should.
Because
my
I saw it from a whole different perspective. All she did was push during this whole part. And all she did was listen to us tell her when to push because she couldn't do anything else because of the epidural. Me, on the other hand, I was standing at her leg, holding her leg up in the air. Instead of her using like a stirrup, I was her stirrup.
Yeah, I didn't have stirrups.
And so I counted out 10-second counts for each of her 3 pushes during the contraction.
And they were holding my calves, not my feet, because I would not allow them to hold my feet.
Well, actually, my hand was on the bottom of her foot and at her knee. She couldn't tell that.
No, I knew that you were touching my foot, but I didn't want anybody else to touch my foot. That's different.
So, I've been looking down, and me, honestly, like one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. Like, I've seen birthing videos before. Full birthing videos. Didn't faze me. Not even a little bit. Watching this didn't really faze me either, but it was definitely an experience.
Tell it the way you always tell it.
I mean, Okay, fine. I'm gonna tell this the way that I told all of my friends when I came out of this birthing. I told this to this guy. His baby mama had a kid, and his was a C-section, so he spent the whole time up next to her head, and they had that sheet in the way he couldn't see a thing. And another one of my friends was like, "Yeah, I was in the waiting room. I wasn't anywhere near that." Another one of my friends was like, "I was up next to her head. I didn't see nothing." And I'm like, you know what? Nobody else had the balls to get down there and watch it happen, but I did. And I'm a huge fan of vaginas. They're a wonderful, wonderful thing. Honestly, one of God's greatest inventions in my eyes. I have seen my fair share of them, and I've seen them do some interesting things. I have never seen a vagina do anything quite like that. And that's how I told all of my friends about my birthing. Also, birth smells like two things.
Shit.
Iron and shit. And because it smells like iron, not blood. It doesn't smell like blood. It smells like a rusty pipe.
Well, there's so much blood that I could see why it would smell like iron.
Oh, I'm not like... I know exactly why, but... So push. Bunch of times. Every other like minute and a half, we were pushing.
See, and no, my right leg was dead, so I would put my left leg up, and I'd be waiting for someone to catch my leg without me rolling off the bed because I'm a huge ball of belly, and people aren't paying attention in between the contractions. They're paying attention when I have one, so I throw my leg over. I'm like, hello, where are you? I'm having a contraction. I'm ready to push. I'm pushing. Where are you? They're shooting the shit.
But push. Hours of this. I'm losing my mind. I haven't slept. I was working full time up north, and every time she called me and said I'm going to the hospital, I didn't sleep for 2 days. The problem is she called me 2 days before she called me to say she was going to the hospital. 2 days before that, she also went to the hospital. So I didn't sleep for the next 2 days while expecting a call. And then she calls me in the middle of the day, I'm going to the hospital again on my day off. And I was planning on sleeping. Like, my friends were about to leave so I could go to sleep when she calls me and says she's on her way to the hospital. So I hadn't slept in like 3 days at this point. I was at 75 hours without sleep when we're coming up on the birth, actually. And I'm delirious. Completely delirious at this point.
And it's 6:45 in the morning
6:45 in the morning. I've been there since 5 o'clock in the afternoon the day before. I haven't slept at all. Hadn't slept in the 2 days before that. Like, I was at 56 hours awake when I got there.
And this is when the progression actually started really taking hold.
And then so she starts pushing. And his head is coming out. And I, for the life of me, cannot figure out where on the baby's head this part of his head should be. It's like, shouldn't I see his forehead by now with how much of his head was out?
Coming out.
Like, I felt like I was waiting for his forehead and his orbital sockets to start showing. But they never did. And there was this massive amount of head sticking out without a face on it. And so in my head, I was kind of starting to worry a little bit that he didn't have a face. And I was like, does my kid, like, not have a face anymore?
He had one in the
ultrasounds. What the fuck happened to his face?
I didn't know about this part.
I never told Rachel this part. And I'm sitting there, and then, like, I really look at it, and I still can't figure it out. And then then his forehead starts to come out.
We are minutes away from having a baby. I'm progressing really well. But
And I'm just so gone at this point.
And I've been pushing for 2 hours. I am just so exhausted. I used up every ounce of energy that I had. And I just say... And I remember saying this. I remember saying, I don't know if I can push anymore. I am just so tired. And the whole room just, like, the energy shifted as soon as I said that. everyone, like, got quiet and worried, and the doctors looked at each other like I might have to go into a C-section.
And I just looked at her. I remember this. I just looked at her and I'm all, you're almost done? Seriously, like, 3 more pushes. That was a total lie. It was like 12 more pushes.
I'm just so tired, and I'm just exhausted. My arms hurt from, like, pulling on my legs. My stomach hurts because of the contractions. My legs hurt from everyone holding. I had bruises the next day from both sides of when I was pushing. And I have handprints. So Jordan is really just like, you were like, you can do this, you're so strong, he's so close. I had no idea because I couldn't see. There was barely any of his head sticking out. And we know now that the back of his head was coming out first.
What happened was he put his chin into his chest, and the very back of his head had to come out first, so his entire skull had to, like, cone shape out the back of his head instead of the top. And their head naturally already is partially coned at the top. So the reason she had to push his head for so long...
He says, you can do a few more pushes. And at this point, I would do the 30 seconds, 3, big pushes during my contraction. And he goes, 1 more. And I was like, okay, I can do 4 in 1 contraction. That's not I can think I could do that if it makes the process quicker. And so the last 3 pushes, I did 4 pushes for every 1 contraction. And the last push, Jordan's like, we could see him. And I was like, well, that was really my motivation to push that one last time. And the doctor had looked away because I did my 3 pushes, and she was knowing that she had to get ready to catch him soon because his head was not out yet. His forehead was out finally. And I think maybe we got to his ears. And, I mean, his head was not even out. It wasn't past right here. And so I was just fully crowned. And Jordan says, 1 more push. So I do my 4th push. She's grabbing instruments. By the way, there are now 11 doctors in the room. There is the actual high-risk pregnancy doctor who is supposed to be delivering me. Instead, he's watching the resident who's delivering me. There are 5 nurses and I think like 7 or 10 other residents or interns watching and taking notes. One actually came over and held my leg for a while, and I had to yell at him to tell him not to touch my foot. Anyway, so I push, and she barely had time to catch him. He came out full body.
It kind of squirted out.
Slip and slide, water park type stuff. And, I mean, I don't, because I couldn't feel anything. Someone told me, he's out. And I was like, okay. And everyone started, I mean, it was completely quiet up until that point. Like, everyone on his family, my mom, were in the very back just kind of, watching silently. And I have never had that many people staring at my vagina before, but that was interesting. So he comes fully out, and another thing my birth plan was I was supposed to be the first person to hold him.
But because he had a bowel movement?
Well, he did have a bowel movement, but it didn't get into his lungs.
But they needed to double check and make sure because of all the other high risks that he had already had involved. They wanted to do a quick check anyways, and then with the bowel movement, they wanted to make sure. So they had to clear and make sure his entire, like, sinus cavity and breathing, all of his breathing and stuff was clear of poo, fecal matter.
Yeah, but, so, Jordan got to cut the cord, and...
Yeah, that was about it.
And so they rush him over to the warmer, and they're checking him out, and he starts screaming. Finally, because when he came out, he just kind of looked like...
He came out and he did this.
He just made one little noise, and then, like, what is going on?
And then she takes him over, they take him over to the warmer to weigh him and measure him and do all the little quick things.
And where are you taking him?
And then we have to check him. So I go over and I watch. because I was determined to keep him in my sight as long as I was there until I left. And he like cries again for like 2 seconds.
And I
And I
say,
look at
it's
him,
okay, baby,
and I'm all
mommy's
looking at
here.
it, and he shuts up again.
Yeah.
And that was all the crying he did for the first like 5 minutes he was alive.
And while they're checking him out, they start pushing on my stomach. The placenta came out basically just as quickly as he did, but I started hemorrhaging. My blood just kept pouring, and my cervix wasn't shutting, and so they were really, really worried because my bleeding did not stop. It was gushing. My mom said it was just a lot of blood. It was pouring out of me. And so they kept pushing on my stomach, and at this point, he's out, and somehow, as soon as he came out, I felt everything. The contractions are done, but my body is sore, and they're pushing on me, and oh, it hurts so bad. I was screaming at them. I go, "You're mean. Why are you touching me? Why are you pushing on me?" And when he came out, I had minimal tearing. I tore basically the smallest amount that a woman could have when pushing out a baby, and I probably wouldn't have torn it all if he didn't come out fully, like at once. And so they sewed me up, and then they finally handed him to me. And at this point, I was just so exhausted.
This all happened in like a minute, by the way.
Oh, they pushed on me for like 3 minutes.
No, he was only over in the warmer before you had him in your arms for 74 seconds.
Oh, well, 74 seconds he was out of my sight, but it seemed like minutes, and he finally got put on me. And I wasn't crying, I was exhausted. I was like, there's a baby on my chest, and he wasn't crying at all. He made a face like he was going to cry, but he never did. And me and Jordan took a few pictures with him, and my mom and his sister and his dad. We all got pictures with him, and then everyone left.
I'm going to tell my end of this birthing story. This is the very end of my part of the birthing story. So we had the whole like birth and everything, this, that, the other. Everybody held him. I held him. Loved it. Ended up needing to leave because I had to go to work that day because we were running short managers at my job. And get in the car, haven't slept, and closing on 80 hours. And I get in the car and I start driving. And I actually like nodded out several times on the drive up. I ended up having to stop in Sunset Point, sleep in the car for a couple hours, but my phone died. So I'm like freaking out, thinking like wake up like thinking I'm late. Ask some random lady that freaked out because I just popped up in my car. Like she didn't see me because I was sleeping in the front seat, and it just pop up, and I must have looked insane.
With that hair, yeah.
My hair gets really, really big, especially when I get sweaty, and so it was hot. Even in like late March in Sunset Point, it was like 104 inside that car probably. So I was sweating, and it was like hair everywhere, and I just pop up looking all crazy, and I'm just like, and I have contacts in because I didn't have glasses yet, and I pop up and I look at her and I'm like, what time is it? Like 12. I'm like, okay, cool. And so I get back and get my car running, drive back up. I make it all the way back to Chino. I'm all the way back to Chino, coming up on the stop sign right before my house. I am 150 meters away from my house.
That far?
150 meters. I am at this stop sign right behind Territorial Elementary School. And I'm braking. And I'm pushing down on the brake, and like when you finally stop yourself and your head kind of snaps back a little bit, that's when I fell asleep. So my car like almost fully stopped, and my head fell back, and I fell asleep, so my foot came off the brake, and I just rolled forward at like 5 or 6 miles an hour into somebody's rear end. They were in neutral though. instead of having their brakes on, so it made a lot bigger sound, and it looked a lot worse because they only moved forward like 4 or 5 feet, but everybody freaked out, and I was like, oh man.
Basically, after birth, everyone just like left. It's like, yay, there's a baby, bye. So I was alone with this tiny little baby. He was born at 7:03 in the morning. I swear, I was pushing and it was nighttime, and then saw when he was born and there was day. So it was insane from my perspective. And everyone left, and I finally got to sleep, sort of, because babies wake up, and I knew that. So, and I wasn't mad every time he woke up. I wasn't exhausted. I was kind of in that new mom. I was just like so happy to have him, but not in that, crying, I'm happy kind of phase. So I was left alone with him, and they monitored him for a day, and the next day we got to go home after they did his hearing test and his PKUs and basically everything to make sure that he was fine. He had his newborn shots. He had a vitamin K shot. He had his like all the newborn shots that they tell you that you're supposed to have. Some people debate on them, and I just let him have it. And I didn't want to do the vitamin K because I knew that he would be having a circumcision within the week, so I knew that he wasn't getting it straight away, so he wouldn't need the vitamin K straight away. And but I gave it to him, but I didn't want to put the gel thing on his eyes, and then everyone convinced me that the goop is good, and so I gave him the goop, and he latched really well, and he was really perfect, and he wouldn't cry. I mean, he's still like that. He's a very, very good baby. And I had a couple visitors. My great-grandmother came and visited her great-great-grandson. She's 91 years old, and this is her first great-great-grandchild. And so she got to see him, and she was happy. And if she was happy, I was okay. And I was having my water break halfway into my pregnancy. I never imagined having a full-size baby. And he was born 7 pounds, 6 ounces, 21 inches long, and got like a 22 on his abscarbs or whatever they're called. And he was completely healthy, and he was breathing well, and everything that I didn't think could happen for him happened. And the first thing I commented on when he was born was that he had normal feet, that he had baby feet, and they were cracked and they were dry, but they were normal, and I was happy. Okay guys, well that's my video. I hope you enjoyed having heard it, and I don't know what the subject is for this upcoming week, but I'm pretty sure it'll be riveting. Please stay tuned and subscribe if you had not. Leave your comments and questions below, and give us a thumbs up, and we hope to see you later. Anyway, so
Don't you know now?
Don't you know? I only remember pressing it 3 times.
Yeah.
Don't you know?
Well, you see what happened was she started pressing it every time she had.
And so they checked me again, right? And they're like, a piece. I didn't say it that way.
So don't you know?
Actually, before this, when there was just the very, very top, I was like, they're like, oh, we can see his head, and I thought that meant his head was out. And I go, pull him out.
And the best thing is, on her sheet of paper with her birthing plan, it said, do not want to give birth laying down. Do not pull him out. It said it with big underlined, bolded pull, like it was pull. Do not pull.
And I don't even remember saying it. I honestly don't.
We couldn't pull him out even if we wanted to.
But
he wasn't anywhere near
remember.
far enough out.
3 people told me that I said that. I go, I did not say that. So.